Today, we're going to dig into a really fundamental pivot in a teacher's role. It's this huge move away from an old model of discipline towards something way more powerful. We're talking about the shift from a teacher who just controls a classroom to one who actually cultivates their students.
And this really gets to the heart of the matter for so many classrooms. Does it ever feel like our whole approach to discipline is just stuck? Like we're in this endless cycle of getting kids to behave for a day, but in the long run, nobody's happy. Not the teachers, not the students. But what if there's a better way?
So here you can see the two paths a teacher can take. On one side, you've got the controller, their whole focus on compliance, right? Using external rules to get short-term fixes. But then you have the cultivator, and they're playing a totally different game. They're all about nurturing a student's own internal drive, focusing on ownership, and aiming for real long-term growth. This is the core pivot we're talking about.
Okay, so what does this new role, this big shift from being an authority figure to an autonomy supportive guide, actually look like when the rubber hits the road in a classroom? It's really about a teacher evolving from a director to a guide.
Now, this whole approach isn't just a nice idea. It's grounded in a really powerful psychological framework called self-determination theory. And it's pretty simple, actually. It just says that all of us, and especially young learners, have three basic psychological needs to really feel motivated and thrive: autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
So a teacher's new mission, then, is to meet these three fundamental needs. They've got to cultivate autonomy, build competence, and foster a sense of relatedness. Let's break down what each of those actually looks like.
First up, autonomy. Now, this isn't about chaos or letting students just run wild. It's about offering structured, meaningful choices in their work. So instead of a teacher saying, "You must do this," an autonomy supportive teacher might say, "Here are a few ways to tackle this. Which one works best for you?" That simple shift helps students feel a sense of ownership, not just blind compliance.
All right, next is competence. And this is all about shifting the focus away from high-stakes, one-and-done grades to a focus on mastery and growth. When kids get a chance to revise their work and learn from their mistakes, they start to see that their effort is what leads to success. This is what builds that famous growth mindset, where a challenge isn't a threat, it's an opportunity to learn.
And finally, we have relatedness. You could almost say this is the foundation for everything else. When teachers build a culture of mutual respect, where making a mistake is just seen as a normal part of learning, they create a safe space. And in that kind of environment, students feel connected, and they're willing to take the kinds of intellectual risks they need to in order to really persevere.
Okay, so this all sounds great, right? But here's the twist. This powerful new vision for teaching is trying to exist inside a system that is under just immense pressure. And that makes it incredibly hard for even the absolute best teachers to pull it off.
It's the logical question, isn't it? If being a cultivator is so much more effective, why are so many classrooms still stuck in that old controller model? Well, the answer usually isn't the teacher. It's the environment they're being forced to work in.
And here are the big culprits. First, you've got the intense pressure from standardized tests, which forces teachers to teach to the test. Then there's the constant scarcity of time and resources, which makes giving that kind of deep individual feedback almost impossible. And finally, you have school policies that can be inconsistent or purely punitive, which completely undermines a teacher's effort to build a positive classroom culture.
And the result of all this systemic pressure? Well, it's tragic, but it's predictable. Teacher burnout. Because when teachers are stressed, overworked, and feeling uninspired themselves, that feeling just inevitably trickles down into the classroom. And at the end of the day, an uninspired teacher simply cannot inspire their students.
So, how do we fix this? The solution isn't to ask even more from our teachers. No, it's to fundamentally change the system so that it supports them. That's how we kickstart real long-term growth in our kids.
This chart lays out the path forward perfectly. For every one of those systemic pressures, there is a corresponding essential support. So instead of just standardized metrics, we need to give teachers autonomy and trust. To fight the scarcity of resources, we have to actually invest in their time and professional development. And to fix inconsistent policies, we need to build a shared, coherent, school-wide culture.
Let's start with autonomy. When we trust teachers as the professionals they are, their own passion and confidence just soar. And you know what? That kind of enthusiasm is absolutely contagious. It directly boosts student engagement and sparks their own genuine interest in learning.
Second, we've got to invest in our teachers with more time and targeted professional development.
This is so critical because it gives them the actual tools and, frankly, the bandwidth they need to make that shift, to move from just controlling behavior to actively developing self-regulation skills in their students.
And finally, a coherent school culture is a total game changer. When an entire school gets on the same page with a unified restorative approach, one that's focused on repairing harm rather than just punishment, it sends a powerful message. It teaches kids that things like responsibility and empathy are way more valuable than just compliance. That's how you build an internal moral compass that lasts a lifetime.
So when you put all of these pieces together, the impact goes so far beyond just one school year or one single classroom. We are really talking about a generational payoff here.
At the end of the day, supporting our teachers to become these cultivators is so much more than an education strategy. It's an investment in our collective future. This is how we lay the groundwork for a whole generation of young people who are resilient, self-directed, and genuinely fulfilled. And that really brings us to the ultimate goal, doesn't it? The point isn't to create followers who are just really good at listening to authority. The point is to cultivate individuals who are skilled at listening to their own best inner voice. And that is the true meaning of discipline.